I've lived a long life, and age, I've learned, is nothing if not a patient teacher. It teaches you to wait, to sit quietly while the world believes it has unraveled you completely, to keep your thoughts, your judgments, your quiet observations tucked away where no one can touch them. Most of the time, that patience works in my favor. But sometimes, just sometimes, someone underestimates you so profoundly that silence is no longer an option. That evening was one of those times. It began like any other family gathering. My son Daniel had invited me over for dinner to meet his fiancée, Camille. I was genuinely happy for him. Losing his mother at a young age had left him with a certain solitude, a weight I feared he would carry forever. So when his voice had buzzed with joy over the phone, announcing that he'd met someone who made his heart light, I felt a quiet relief that I could barely articulate. I wanted to be part of this moment, to support him, to embrace the woman who had stirred happiness in my boy's life. I polished my shoes until they reflected the ceiling lights, donned the dark green sweater Daniel had gifted me the previous Christmas, and carried a small bouquet of lilies for Camille. Presentation mattered, even if I was the one doing the meeting, not the other way around. I reminded myself that respect, warmth, and composure are never out of style. When I arrived, Daniel greeted me with his characteristic warmth, pulling me into a hug that was as familiar as it was comforting, then led me inside. And then she appeared, Camille. She was striking, poised, elegant, with dark hair swept back, pearl earrings catching the light with every subtle tilt of her head. Her French accent curled around her words like fine silk. She leaned forward, kissed me gently on both cheeks, and whispered, Enchanté, monsieur. I returned her warmth with a polite, measured smile. The pleasure was mine, I said internally. The evening began smoothly. We gathered around the table. The aroma of roast chicken mingled with hints of fresh herbs, a quiet warmth settling over the room. Glasses caught candlelight and refracted it across the walls. Camille spoke of her travels, her career, her passions, and her love for Daniel. I listened, asking questions, nodding thoughtfully, feeling the pride of a father who had watched his son weather loss and loneliness and emerge whole, ready to give his heart again. Daniel's gaze never left her, and I could see the joy in his eyes reflected in hers. Yet as the evening unfolded, a subtle shift occurred. Daniel excused himself to fetch more wine, leaving Camille engaged with her phone. She murmured something under her breath in French, a whisper I almost dismissed. But my ears, trained over 12 years living in Paris, catching nuances and subtleties, heard it clearly. How will I bear this for years? The words slashed through me, as sharp as knives cloaked in silk. I had lived in Paris long enough to know every turn of phrase, every subtle sting hidden behind politeness. Camille, I realized, assumed the old man in the green sweater had no comprehension beyond English. She assumed I was deaf to nuance, to insult, to the barbs hidden in foreign sounds. I sat, spoon poised, face a mask of calm, my heart constricted, but I said nothing. That was not yet the moment for confrontation. Daniel returned, jovial and light-hearted, and the evening pressed on as if nothing had occurred. Camille's smile was effortless, radiant, honeyed as though the words she had uttered had never left her lips. But I heard them, boring, provincial, pedantic. My pulse remained steady, my expression composed, but the words lodged in my mind, irritating and insistent. Dessert arrived, soft and fragrant, the final act of a meal that had begun so promisingly. Daniel excused himself once more, taking a work call that required his immediate attention. Camille leaned back, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass as she let out a sigh heavy with dramatics. And then, the whisper came again. Fatigue. He talks too slowly. He exhausts me. Old men like him should stay alone. The calm I had maintained shattered softly, just enough to allow me to speak. I cleared my throat gently. Camille looked at me, the polite mask on her face cracking imperceptibly. I leaned forward slightly, my voice even but firm, and in clear, precise French, I said, You know, miss, it is extremely rude to mock someone in a language you assume they cannot understand, especially when that person is the father of the man you claim to love. Her reaction was instantaneous. Eyes widening, her color drained from her face. For a brief, suspended moment, she resembled a child caught with sticky fingers in a jar of forbidden sweets. She stammered, floundering, Vous, vous, parlez français? I allowed myself a small, quiet smile, tempered with the weight of experience. Better than you, I might say. The room fell into a hush, the only sound the relentless tick of the clock on the wall. Her words tangled in her throat as she attempted to explain, excuses half-formed, failing entirely. Daniel returned just then, his jovial energy colliding with the sudden tension in the room. His eyes swept the table, landing on Camille's pale, startled expression. What happened? He asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Camille opened her mouth, but no words emerged. I decided to spare her the humiliation for Daniel's sake. I stood, laid a hand on my son's shoulder, and said lightly, We were simply enjoying a little cultural exchange, weren't we, Camille? She nodded quickly, eyes lowered, unable to meet either of our gazes. The remainder of the evening passed with quiet restraint. I thanked them for the dinner, hugged my son tightly, and offered Camille a polite goodnight. My heart ached for Daniel, for the man who had found joy in love, only to have it shadowed by pretense and disrespect. I did not wish to destroy his happiness, yet I could not ignore what I had heard, what I had felt, what I had known. Driving home, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. I reflected on the layers we all wear, masks carefully crafted over years to navigate a world that rarely offers pure kindness without strings attached. I thought of my own patience, honed over decades, the quiet strength that allows one to endure, to observe, to act only when the moment is right. And I knew in that moment of stillness that Camille had underestimated me entirely. She had assumed age and a quiet demeanor equaled weakness, ignorance, compliance. She was wrong, and she would remember that, even if only in private regret. I thought of Daniel, of the joy and hope that radiated from him, and I realized the delicate balance I had to maintain, not just for my own dignity, but for the preservation of the life my son had built. Love, I understood, was fragile, and even a misstep in trust or perception could fracture it irreparably. Yet respect, fundamental and unyielding, was not negotiable. It demanded recognition and occasionally the courage to assert it. By the time I reached my home, the night had deepened into quiet shadows, and I allowed myself a long, slow exhale. Life, I reminded myself, is a series of choices, some visible, some invisible, each shaping the course of our days. That night, I had chosen to act with dignity, with tact, with a measured revelation that would, I hoped, leave a lasting impression not in humiliation, but in awareness. I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window and watched the city hum below. In the distance, lights flickered like distant stars, indifferent yet persistent. Patience, I reminded myself once more, is not passive. It is the quiet accumulation of experience, wisdom, and strength until the moment arrives when action becomes necessary. Camille had spoken with disregard, with condescension, believing her words hidden in a language foreign to me. She had failed to recognize the man she faced, a man of knowledge, of history, of quiet authority. And I had reminded her, not with anger, not with spectacle, but with precision, calm, and truth. That is the power of patience and the lesson of age. You endure, you observe, and when the time is right, you act. Always with clarity, always with grace, always with the knowledge that respect, once given, must never be mistaken for weakness.